3 days later, Sarah was having a particularly difficult morning at work. The delivery truck had come late, and Mr. Johnson was angry with everyone. 2 employees had called in sick, so Sarah had to do extra work. By lunchtime, she felt exhausted and stressed. Her back hurt more than usual from lifting heavy boxes of canned goods. Sarah decided she needed to get out of the store for her lunch break. Usually, she ate in the small break room, but today she wanted fresh air and a change of scenery. She grabbed her sandwich and walked outside. The October air was cool and felt good on her face. She had worked inside under bright lights all morning, and the natural daylight was a relief. Sarah started walking down the street next to the grocery store. She had worked there for 8 years, but she rarely had time to explore the neighborhood. During the day, most of the buildings were old and some were empty. There was a small restaurant that had closed down last year, and a barber shop that only old men visited. As she walked, Sarah noticed a building she had never really paid attention to before. It was a 2-story brick building with a sign that said Riverside Community Center. The building looked old but was in better condition than some of the others on the street. There were a few cars parked outside and Sarah could see lights. On inside, Sarah had lived in this town her whole life, but she had never been inside the community center. When Danny was younger, she was always too busy working to take him to community activities. She knew they had programs for kids and senior citizens, but she never had time to find out more about them. Today, something made her curious. Maybe it was because she was tired of her routine, or maybe she just wanted to sit somewhere different to eat her lunch. Sarah walked up to the front door and went inside. The first thing she noticed was how quiet it was compared to the grocery store. At work, there was always noise from the cash registers, the coolers humming, and customers talking. Here, it was peaceful. The front desk was empty, but she could hear voices coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Sarah found herself in a large main hall. The room was big with high ceilings and old wooden floors. The walls were painted yellow, but the paint was fading and peeling in some places. There were folding chairs stacked against one wall and tables pushed to the side. A few posters hung on the walls advertising events like bingo night and senior lunch program. The room had large windows that let in natural light. It was much brighter and more cheerful than the break room at work. Sarah thought this would be a nice place to eat her lunch. She sat down at one of the tables and unwrapped her sandwich. As she ate, Sarah looked around the room more carefully. In the far corner, she noticed something that made her stop chewing. There was an old piano pushed against the wall. It was an upright piano with brown wood that had seen better days. Even from across the room, Sarah could see that it was not in good condition. Sarah finished her sandwich quickly and walked over to the piano. Up close, she could see how damaged it was. The wood was scratched and dented. Some of the keys were yellow with age, and others looked like they were stuck down. There was dust on top of the piano and sheet music scattered around that. Looked old and forgotten. Sarah touched one of the keys gently. It made a sound, but it was not the right note. She tried another key and it did not make any sound at all. She pressed a few more keys and realized that many of them were broken or out of tune. This piano had not been played properly in a very long time. "Oh, that old thing doesn't work anymore," said a voice behind her. Sarah turned around and saw a woman about her age walking toward her. The woman had gray hair and wore a friendly smile. She was carrying a clipboard and looked like she worked at the community center. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quickly. "I didn't mean to touch anything. I was just looking." "Don't worry about it," the woman said. "I'm Linda, and I manage this place." "Are you here for one of our programs?" "No, I was just eating lunch," Sarah explained. "I work at the grocery store next door. I've never been in here before." "Well, welcome. We're always happy to have visitors," Linda said. "That piano has been here for about 15 years. It was donated by a family when they moved away. It was in good condition back then, but we never had money to maintain it properly." Sarah looked at the piano again. Even though it was damaged, she could see that it had once been beautiful. The wood had a rich color under all the scratches, and the design was elegant. Someone had loved this piano once. Do people ever try to play it? Sarah asked, and Linda laughed. Sometimes the teenagers dare each other to touch it. They call it the zombie piano because it makes such awful sounds. We've been thinking about getting rid of it for years. It just takes up space and we could use the room for other activities. Sarah felt sad hearing this. She remembered her own piano from when she was young. Her family's piano had not been fancy, but it had been her whole world. She had practiced on it every day and dreamed of becoming a real pianist someday. What would you do with it? Sarah asked. Probably donate it to someone who can fix it up, or maybe just throw it away if nobody wants it, Linda said. It would cost too much money to repair, and we don't have anyone here who plays piano anyway. Sarah nodded but did not say anything. She was thinking about how sad it was that this piano would end up in the garbage. Even though it was broken, it was still a piano. Someone had made music on it once, and maybe someone could make music on it again. I should get back to work, Sarah said, looking at the clock on the wall. Her lunch break was almost over. Come back anytime, Linda said. We're open every day until 6 o'clock. We have programs for all ages and lunch is free for seniors on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sarah thanked Linda and walked back to the grocery store. But she could not stop thinking about the piano. For the rest of her shift, while she scanned groceries and helped customers, part of her mind was still in that community center room, looking at the old, broken piano. That night at dinner, Sarah told Danny about the community center. Maybe you would like some of their programs, she said. They probably have activities for teenagers. Danny shrugged. I don't know, Mom. I'm pretty busy with school and homework. Sarah understood. Danny was like her. They both kept to themselves and did not join group activities. But maybe that was not always a good thing. Maybe they both needed to get out more and meet other people. After Danny went to his room to do homework, Sarah sat in the living room thinking about her day. She kept remembering the piano and how sad it looked sitting in the corner, covered with dust and forgotten. She thought about her own piano from years ago and how much joy it had brought her. Sarah had not thought seriously about music in a long time. Her life was too busy and difficult for dreams like that. But seeing the piano had awakened something in her that she thought was gone forever. She found herself remembering songs she used to play and wondering if her fingers could still move the way they used to. Before going to bed, Sarah made a decision. Tomorrow, if she had time during her lunch break, she would go back to the community center. Not to eat lunch this time, but to look at the piano again. Maybe she would even touch the keys again, just to see if she remembered how they were supposed to feel. Sarah did not know why this was important to her. She just knew that something about that broken piano had touched her heart in a way that nothing had for many years. Maybe it was because they were both old and damaged and forgotten. Maybe it was because she saw something in the piano that other people did not see, the possibility that broken things could still make beautiful sounds if someone cared enough to try. As Sarah fell asleep that night, she dreamed about music for the first time in years. In her dream, she was young again, sitting at her family's piano, playing a song that made everyone smile. When she woke up the next morning, she could still hear the melody in her head. The next day at work was even worse than the day before. Mr. Johnson was in a terrible mood because the store's main cooler had broken down during the night. All the frozen food had to be thrown away, and the repairman said it would cost a lot of money to fix. Mr. Johnson blamed everyone for everything. Even though it was not their fault, Sarah's coworkers were also stressed and unhappy. Janet, who worked at the customer service desk, complained all morning about rude customers. Mike, who stocked the shelves, was angry because he had to work overtime again. Even Mrs. Patterson, the oldest employee who usually stayed positive, seemed tired and frustrated. By lunchtime, everyone was in a bad mood. Sarah sat in the break room with Janet and Mike, eating their sandwiches in silence. The room felt heavy with sadness and worry. Sarah looked at her coworkers and felt sorry for them. They were all good people who worked hard, but their jobs were difficult and they did not get paid enough. I hate this place, Mike said suddenly. I've been working here for 6 years and nothing ever gets better. The equipment is old, the boss is mean, and we never get raises. At least you have a job, Janet said. My sister has been looking for work for 3 months. But you're right, this place is depressing. I feel like I'm getting older just sitting. Here, Sarah listened to her friends complain, and she understood how they felt. She felt the same way most days. But today, for some reason, she wanted to make them feel better. Maybe it was because of the dream she had about music, or maybe she was just tired of everyone being sad all the time. You know what? Sarah said, standing up. We all need to laugh about something. Come with me. I want to show you something funny. Janet and Mike looked at her with surprise. Sarah was usually quiet during lunch and never suggested doing anything. Together. Where are we going? Janet asked. To the community center next door. There's something there that might make you smile, Sarah said. Mike and Janet looked at each other and shrugged. They still had 15 minutes left of their lunch break, and anything was better than sitting in the depressing break room. The three of them walked to the community center together. Sarah led them into the main hall where the piano sat in the corner. Linda was not there today, and the room was empty except for them. Look at this old piano, Sarah said, pointing to the instrument. It's completely broken. Watch this. She pressed a few keys to show how bad they sounded. Some keys made no noise at all, others made strange, out-of-tune sounds. Janet laughed. Wow, that's terrible. It sounds like a dying cat. The woman who works here said the teenagers call it the zombie piano, Sarah said. They're going to throw it away because nobody can play it. Mike pressed some keys and shook his head. I can see why. This thing is hopeless. Sarah sat down on the old piano bench. The bench was wobbly and creaked when she moved. You know, I used to play piano when I was young, she said. I wonder if I can still remember anything. You played piano? Janet asked with surprise. I never knew that about you. It was a long time ago, Sarah said. Before Danny was born, before I started working at the store, I was pretty good at it, actually. Sarah looked at the broken keys and had an idea. Watch this, she said with a mischievous smile. I'm going to try to play a real song on this broken piano. It will probably sound awful, but maybe it will be funny. She placed her fingers on the keys and tried to remember one of the songs she used to play. Für Elise by Beethoven came to her mind. It was one of the first classical pieces she had learned as a teenager. She remembered most of the melody, even after all these years. Sarah started to play, but immediately ran into problems. The first note she needed was one of the broken keys that made no sound. So she moved her finger to a different key that worked and played that note instead. When she needed another broken key, she found a working key nearby and played that one. At first it sounded strange and wrong. But as Sarah continued playing, something amazing started to happen. She began to figure out how to work around the broken keys. When a key was missing, she would skip it or replace it with a note that sounded good. When a key was out of tune, she would play it anyway and make it part of the melody. Janet and Mike stopped laughing and started listening more carefully. Even though the piano was broken, Sarah was making music that sounded beautiful. It was not exactly Für Elise anymore. It was something new and different, but it was definitely music. Sarah's fingers moved faster as she remembered more of the song. Her hands knew where to go, even after so many years. She found herself changing the melody to fit the working keys, creating new harmonies and rhythms. The broken piano was forcing her to be creative in ways she had never tried before. As she played, Sarah felt something she had not felt in years. Joy, pure, simple joy. Her heart felt lighter as she forgot about work and bills and all the things that usually worried her. For these few minutes, she was just a person making music, and nothing else mattered. When she finished the song, the room was completely quiet. Janet and Mike stared at her with their mouths open. Sarah looked at them and started to laugh. "Oh, that was supposed to be funny," she said. "Did it work?" "Sarah," Janet said slowly, "that was not funny. That was beautiful. I can't believe. You just made that broken piano sound so good." "How did you do that?" Mike asked. "Half the keys don't even work, but you made it sound like real music." Sarah stood up from the piano bench, feeling embarrassed by their attention. It wasn't that good. I was just fooling around. I probably made a lot of mistakes. Are you kidding? Janet said. I got goosebumps listening to you play. I never knew you had talent like that. Sarah looked at the piano again. She could not believe what had just happened. When she first sat down, she thought she would just press a few keys and make her friends laugh. She never expected to actually play a whole song, especially not on such a damaged instrument. I should probably practice more before I try to play in public, Sarah said jokingly. Practice? Mike said. Sarah, you just played a classical song on a piano that doesn't work. If you practiced on a real piano, you would probably be amazing. Sarah felt her cheeks turn red. She was not used to people complimenting her talents. At work, she was just another employee who scanned groceries and stocked shelves. Nobody there knew that she had once dreamed of being a musician. We should get back to work, Sarah said, checking the time. Their lunch break was almost over. They walked back to the grocery store. Janet and Mike kept talking about Sarah's playing. They could not believe that their quiet coworker had such a hidden talent. They wanted to know why she had stopped playing and whether she had ever performed in public. Sarah answered their questions politely, but she was thinking about something else. She was thinking about how good it had felt to play music again, even on a broken piano. She had forgotten how music could make her feel like a different person, not just a tired grocery store worker, but someone with creativity and passion back. At work, Sarah found it hard to concentrate on her job. Her fingers kept moving as if they were still playing piano keys. She caught herself humming the melody of Fur Elise while she scanned groceries. Customers probably thought she was just in a good mood, but Sarah knew it was more than that. That evening, Sarah told Danny about playing the piano at the community center. She described the broken keys and how she had to change the song to make it work. I wish I could have heard you play, Mom, Danny said. I don't remember you ever playing piano before. That's because I stopped playing before you were born. Sarah said, I sold our piano when your father left and we needed money. Danny looked sad when she said this. Maybe you could play again sometime? I mean, if you want to. Sarah smiled at her son. Maybe I will. That broken piano isn't going anywhere, and Linda said I could come back any time. That night, Sarah could not fall asleep easily. Her mind kept replaying the feeling of her fingers on the piano keys. She remembered other songs she used to play and wondered if she could still play them. She thought about how surprised Janet and Mike had been, and how good it felt to share her music with other people. Sarah did not know that her simple lunch break adventure would lead to something much bigger. She just knew that for the first time in years, she had felt truly happy doing something she loved. And that feeling made her want to play music again, broken piano or not. The next week, Sarah found herself thinking about the piano every day. During quiet moments at work, she would remember the feeling of the keys under her fingers and the sound of music filling the community center. She had not realized how much she missed playing until she started again. On Wednesday, Sarah decided to use her lunch break to visit the piano again. She told Janet and Mike that she was going back to the community center, and they asked if they could come with her. But Sarah wanted to be alone this time. She felt embarrassed about playing in front of people, even her friends. When Sarah arrived at the community center, Linda was at the front desk talking to an elderly man about the senior lunch program. Sarah waved politely and walked quietly to the main hall. The room was empty, and the piano was waiting in the corner, just as she had left it. Sarah sat down at the piano bench and looked at the damaged keys. Today, she wanted to try playing a different song. She thought about Moonlight Sonata, another piece she had learned years ago. It was slower and more emotional than Fur Elise, and she wondered if she could make it work on the broken piano. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. Just like before, she had to work around the broken keys, changing notes and creating new melodies when the original ones would not work. But this time, Sarah felt more confident. She was starting to understand which keys worked and which ones did not. As she played, Sarah lost herself in the music. The slow, beautiful melody of Moonlight Sonata filled the room. Even though it was changed and adapted for the broken piano, Sarah found that the missing keys forced her to be more creative. She added her own touches to the song, making it something new and personal. What Sarah did not know was that someone was listening to her play. Marcus Williams, a music teacher at the local high school, had come to the community center to set up equipment for an after-school program. He was carrying music stands and sheet music when he heard piano music coming from the main hall. Marcus stopped walking and listened carefully. He knew Moonlight Sonata very well. He had taught it to many students over the years, but this version sounded different. It was still beautiful, but the melody was changed in interesting ways. Someone was playing the song on what sounded like a very out-of-tune piano. Marcus was curious about who was playing. He knew that the community center had an old piano, but he had tried it once and found it completely unplayable. Half the keys were broken or out of tune. Yet someone was making beautiful music on that same piano, quietly. Marcus walked toward the main hall and looked through the doorway. He saw a woman in a blue grocery store uniform sitting at the old piano. Her back was to him, but he could see her hands moving gracefully across the keys. She was playing with confidence and skill, working around the broken keys like she had been doing it for years. Marcus was amazed. This was not just someone fooling around with the piano. This was a real musician who understood how to make music even with limited resources. The way she adapted the classical piece to fit the working keys showed creativity and deep musical knowledge. When Sarah finished playing, she sat quietly for a moment with her hands in her lap. She always felt peaceful after playing music, like her mind had been cleared of all worries and stress. "That was incredible," said a voice behind her. Sarah jumped and turned around quickly. She saw a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes standing in the doorway. He was holding music equipment and looked like he belonged in the community center. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, standing up from the piano bench. "I didn't know anyone was here. I can leave if you need the room." "Please don't leave," Marcus said, walking into the room. "I'm Marcus Williams. I teach music at the high school, and I use this room sometimes for after-school programs. I heard you playing and had to see who was making such beautiful music on that old piano." Sarah felt her face turn red with embarrassment. "I was just practicing a little. I know the piano is broken, but I like trying to make it work anyway." Marcus looked at the piano and then back at Sarah. "How long have you been playing piano?" "Well, I played when I was young," Sarah said, "but I haven't played in many years. I just started again last week when I found this piano." "You just started again last week?" Marcus asked with surprise. "And you can already play Beethoven? That's remarkable." Sarah shrugged. "I remembered some songs from when I was a teenager. I used to be pretty good, but that was a long time ago." Marcus walked over to the piano and pressed a few keys. Most of them made terrible sounds or no sound at all. "I've tried to play this piano before, and I couldn't make it sound like anything but noise." "How do you do it?" "I just work around the broken keys," Sarah explained. "When a key doesn't work, I use a different key that sounds good with the melody. Sometimes I have to change the song a little, but that's okay." Marcus was impressed by Sarah's simple explanation. What she was describing was actually very advanced musical skill. To change a classical piece in real time while playing required deep understanding of harmony and composition. Most of his high school students could not do what Sarah was doing so naturally. "Would you mind playing something else?" Marcus asked. "I'm a music teacher, and I have to say, your ability to adapt music like that is really special." Sarah hesitated. She was not used to playing for other people, especially not for a real music teacher. "I don't know if I'm good enough to play. For a teacher, I probably make a lot of mistakes." "Everyone makes mistakes," Marcus said kindly. "But what you're doing isn't about being perfect. You're making art with limited tools, and that takes real creativity." Sarah thought for a moment and then sat back down at the piano. She decided to try Canon in D by Pachelbel, a piece she had always loved. It had a repeating melody that she thought might work well on the broken piano. As Sarah played, Marcus listened with growing amazement. She was not just adapting the music, she was improving it in some ways. The broken keys forced her to find new harmonies and rhythms that made the familiar piece sound fresh and interesting. Her musical instincts were excellent, and her technique was much better than most amateur players. When Sarah finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah," he said finally, "do you realize how talented you are?" Sarah laughed nervously. "I'm just a grocery store worker who plays piano as a hobby. I'm not talented like real musicians." "Real musicians?" Marcus repeated. "Sarah, you are a real musician. What you just did requires years of training and natural ability. I've been teaching music for 20 years, and I've never heard anyone adapt classical pieces the way you do." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. A professional music teacher was telling her that she was talented. She had always thought of herself as someone who used to play piano a little bit, not as a real musician. "I think you're being too kind," Sarah said. "I'm sure your students are much better than me. My students can play the notes correctly when they have a good piano," Marcus said. "But when something goes wrong, when a key sticks or they forget part of the song, they stop playing. You keep making music no matter what problems you face. That's what real musicians do." Marcus sat down in one of the folding chairs near the piano. "Can I ask you something? Why did you stop playing music for so many years?" Sarah told Marcus about her life, how she had wanted to study music in college but had to work instead, how she got married and had Danny, how she ended up working at the grocery store to support her family. She explained that there had never been time or money for music. Marcus listened to her story with sadness. He had heard similar stories from other talented people who had given up their dreams because of life's difficulties. But he had never met anyone who had picked up music again after so many years and played at such a high level. "Sarah," Marcus said, "I know this might sound strange, but would you be interested in playing music more seriously? I think you have the talent to perform for other people." Sarah stared at him in shock. "Perform? You mean like in concerts?" "Maybe not concerts right away," Marcus said with a smile. "But there are smaller venues where you could play. The community center has music nights sometimes, and there are coffee shops and restaurants that have live music. People would love to hear you play." Sarah shook her head. "I don't think I'm ready for anything like that. I've only been playing again for a week." "Then keep practicing," Marcus said. "But don't underestimate yourself. You have a gift, and gifts are meant to be shared." Sarah looked at the broken piano and thought about what Marcus was saying. The idea of playing music for other people was both exciting and terrifying. She had never imagined that anyone would want to hear her play. "I should get back to work," Sarah said, checking the time. "My lunch break is almost over." "Of course," Marcus said. "But Sarah, would it be okay if I came back tomorrow to listen to you play again? I'm setting up a music program here, and I think you could inspire some of my students." Sarah nodded, still feeling overwhelmed by everything Marcus had said. As she walked back to the grocery store, her mind was spinning with new possibilities. For the first time in years, someone believed in her musical ability. Someone thought she was talented enough to play for other people. That evening, Sarah told Danny about meeting Marcus and what he had said about her playing. For the next week, Sarah visited the community center every day during her lunch break. Marcus came back just as he had promised, and he brought some of his high school students with him. Sarah was nervous about playing in front of teenagers, but they were kind and seemed genuinely interested in her music. Marcus had explained to his students that Sarah was a special musician who could make beautiful music even with broken instruments. The students watched in amazement as Sarah played classical pieces on the damaged piano, adapting each song to work with whatever keys were functioning that day. "How do you know which keys to use instead?" asked Emma, a 16-year-old who played violin in the school orchestra. "I just listen to how the notes sound together," Sarah explained. "If one note doesn't work, I try to find another note that fits with the melody. Sometimes the new note sounds even better than the original one." Marcus was impressed by how well Sarah could explain her musical choices. She had natural teaching ability along with her playing skills. He began to think that Sarah could help with his music programs, maybe even teach some classes for adult beginners on Friday of that week. Marcus asked Sarah if he could record her playing one song on his phone. "I want to show my wife," he said. "She's also a music teacher, and I know she would love to hear you play." Sarah was hesitant about being recorded. She still felt like she was just playing around and not doing anything special. But Marcus was so enthusiastic that she agreed to let him record one short song. Sarah chose to play Clair de Lune by Debussy, a gentle and beautiful piece that she had always loved. As she played, Marcus held his phone and recorded her performance. The video showed Sarah in her blue grocery store uniform, sitting at the old, damaged piano and creating lovely music despite all the broken keys. When Sarah finished playing, Marcus looked at the video on his phone. "This is perfect," he said. "You can really see how you're working around the broken keys, and the music sounds wonderful." "What are you going to do with it?" Sarah asked. "Just show it to my wife," Marcus sighed. "Maybe a few other music teacher friends?" "Don't worry, I won't share it anywhere public without asking you first." Sarah nodded and went back to work, thinking nothing more about the video. She trusted Marcus and knew he would not do anything to embarrass her. That evening, Marcus went home and showed the video to his wife, Elena. Elena was a piano teacher who had studied at a famous music school. She watched the video with growing amazement. "Marcus, this woman is extraordinary," Elena said after watching the video twice. "The way she adapts the music in real time shows incredible skill. And look at this piano, half the keys don't even work. How is she making it sound so beautiful?" "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I wanted you to see it. She says she's just a grocery store worker who used to play piano, but she's obviously much more than that." Elena watched the video again, paying attention to Sarah's technique and musical choices. "Marcus, people need to see this. This is not just good playing, this is inspirational. Here's a woman who found a broken piano and turned it into something magical." "You think I should share it online?" Marcus asked. "I told her I would only show it to a few friends." "You should ask her permission first," Elena said. "But if she agrees, this video could really touch people. There's something beautiful about making music with whatever you have, even if it's not perfect." The next day was Saturday, and Sarah was visiting her mother at the nursing home. She did this every weekend, sitting with her mother and talking about simple things. Her mother's memory was getting worse, but she still enjoyed having visitors. "How is work, dear?" her mother asked like she did every week. "It's fine, Mom," Sarah said. "Actually, something interesting happened this week. I've been playing piano again." Sarah told her mother about finding the broken piano and meeting Marcus. Her mother listened with a confused expression, like she was trying to remember something important. "You always played so beautifully," her mother said suddenly. "I remember when you were young, you played for the church sometimes. Everyone loved to hear you play." Sarah was surprised that her mother remembered this. Her memory had been so bad lately that Sarah thought she had forgotten about the music completely. "Do you think I should keep playing, Mom?" Sarah asked. "Of course you should," her mother said firmly. "Music is a gift. You should not waste gifts." On Monday morning, Marcus was waiting for Sarah when she arrived at the community center for lunch. He looked excited about something. "Sarah, I have a question for you," Marcus said. "My wife saw the video I took of you playing, and she thinks it's really special. She wants to know if you would be okay with us sharing it online. Not to make fun of you or anything like that. She thinks people would be inspired by your story." Sarah felt nervous about the idea. "What do you mean, share it online?" "On social media like Facebook or Instagram," Marcus explained. "Elena thinks that people would love to see how you make beautiful music with a broken piano. It shows that you don't need perfect equipment to create something wonderful." Sarah thought about this for a moment. She was not very familiar with social media. She had a Facebook account but rarely used it. The idea of strangers watching her play piano was scary. "I don't know," Sarah said. "What if people think I'm not very good? What if they make fun of me?" "Sarah, anyone who watches that video will be impressed," Marcus said. "You're doing something that most trained musicians couldn't do. Trust me, people will love it." Sarah looked at the broken piano and thought about what her mother had said about not wasting gifts. Maybe Marcus and his wife were right. Maybe sharing her music could make other people happy, even if it made her nervous. "Okay," Sarah said finally. "You can share the video. But please don't use my last name or say where I work. I don't want my boss to get angry about me being on the internet during work time." Marcus promised to be careful about her privacy. That evening, he and Elena worked together to post the video on Marcus's Facebook page. Elena helped him write a description that explained the story. "Local grocery clerk brings dead piano back to life," Elena wrote. "This amazing woman found this broken piano at our community center and turned it into something magical. Watch how she adapts classical music to work around the damaged keys. This is what real musicianship looks like. Making beautiful art with whatever tools you have." Pure inspiration, Marcus posted the video late Monday night. When he woke up Tuesday morning, he could not believe what he saw. The video had been shared 50 times and had hundreds of comments. People were amazed by Sarah's playing and touched by the story of the broken piano. "This made me cry," one person wrote. "What a beautiful reminder that broken things can still make beautiful music." "I'm a piano teacher and I'm blown away by her skill," another person commented. "The way she adapts the music shows incredible talent." By Tuesday afternoon, the video had been shared over 1,000 times. Local news websites picked up the story and people from other states were commenting and sharing. Marcus's phone kept beeping with notifications about new comments and shares, Marcus found Sarah at the community center during her lunch break and showed her what was happening on his phone. "Sarah, look at this," he said excitedly. "Thousands of people have watched your video and everyone loves it. Look at these comments." Sarah read some of the comments with amazement. People from all over the country were writing kind things about her playing. Many people shared their own stories about finding music later in life or making art with limited resources. "I can't believe this," Sarah said. "All these people watch me play? And they're all saying wonderful things," Marcus said. "You've inspired so many people, Sarah. They see someone who didn't let a broken piano stop her from making music." Sarah felt overwhelmed but also proud. She had never imagined that her simple lunch break piano playing could touch so many people. For years, she had felt invisible, just another grocery store worker that nobody noticed. Now thousands of strangers were saying that her music was beautiful and inspiring. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But I think this is just the beginning. When something touches people the way your video has, it usually keeps growing." Sarah looked at the broken piano that had started everything. A week ago, it was just a damaged instrument that nobody wanted. Now, it was part of a story that was spreading across the internet and making people smile. Maybe broken things really could become beautiful again if someone cared enough to try. That evening, Sarah showed Danny the video and all the comments on Marcus's phone. Danny was amazed that his mother had become famous on the internet. "Mom, you're like a celebrity now," Danny said with excitement. "Everyone thinks you're amazing," Sarah laughed. "I'm not a celebrity, Danny. I'm just someone who likes to play piano." But as she read more comments from people who said her video had inspired them to pursue their own forgotten dreams, Sarah began to understand that maybe she was more than just someone who liked to play piano. Maybe she was someone who could help other people believe in themselves just by sharing her music. By Wednesday morning, Marcus's phone was ringing constantly. The video of Sarah playing the broken piano had been shared over 10,000 times, and news reporters from 3 different television stations wanted to interview her. Marcus had never experienced anything like this before. At the grocery store, Sarah was trying to focus on her work, but it was difficult. Janet and Mike kept asking her about the video, and customers were starting to recognize her from the internet. One elderly woman approached her at the checkout counter and said, "Aren't you the lady who plays the broken piano? My granddaughter showed me your video. It was beautiful." Sarah felt embarrassed by all the attention. She had always preferred to stay in the background and not be noticed. Now people were staring at her and taking pictures with their phones. When they thought she was not looking during her lunch break, Sarah went to the community center as usual. She found Marcus waiting for her with a notebook full of phone numbers and messages. "Sarah, I've been getting calls all morning," Marcus said excitedly. "Television news shows want to interview you. Newspapers want to write stories about you. A radio station in the next city wants you to call in and talk about your music." Sarah sat down at the piano bench and looked at the broken keys. 3 days ago, this was just her quiet place to play music during lunch. Now it was the center of a media storm that she did not understand. "I don't think I want to be on television," Sarah said quietly. "I'm not good at talking to people, especially reporters." "But Sarah, people love your story," Marcus said. "They're calling you the piano whisperer and America's hidden gem. You've given people hope that they can pursue their dreams no matter what obstacles they face." Sarah played a few notes on the piano while she thought about what Marcus was saying. The broken keys made their usual odd sounds, but somehow they still comforted her. "Can I see the video again?" Sarah asked. Marcus showed her the video on his phone. Sarah watched herself playing Claire de Lune on the damaged piano. She had to admit that it did look inspiring, a woman in a work uniform making beautiful music with broken tools. But it was strange to see herself from the outside like this. "Look at the comments," Marcus said, scrolling down on his phone. "There are thousands of them now." Sarah read comment after comment from people all over the world. A woman in California wrote, "This inspired me to start painting again after 20 years. A man in Texas said, "If she can make beautiful music with a broken piano, I can learn to play guitar with my arthritis." A teenager in Florida wrote, "This video made me realize that I don't need expensive equipment to make art." "I had no idea," Sarah said softly. "I was just playing piano for fun." "Sometimes the most powerful art comes from the most honest places," Marcus said. "You weren't trying to become famous. You were just sharing something you love, and people can feel that authenticity." While they were talking, Linda from the community center rushed into the main hall. She looked excited and overwhelmed. "Sarah, there are news vans outside," Linda said breathlessly. 3 different television stations are here. They want to interview you about the piano video." Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. "Television vans? Here? They're setting up cameras outside," Linda said. "One reporter asked if they could film inside with the piano, but I told them they needed to ask you first." Sarah stood up from the piano bench quickly. "I need to get back to work. I can't deal with this right now." "Sarah, wait," Marcus said gently. "I know this is overwhelming, but maybe you should talk to at least one reporter. Your story is helping people." "Don't you want to share that message?" Sarah thought about all the comments from people who said her video had inspired them. She remembered what her mother had said about not wasting gifts. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe she had a responsibility to share her story if it could help. "Other people, okay," Sarah said nervously. "But only one interview, and they have to promise not to film me at work. I don't want to cause problems for my job." Marcus arranged for Sarah to talk to a reporter from the local news station after. Her work shift ended that day. The reporter, a kind woman named Jessica Chun, met Sarah at the community center at 6 o'clock. "Thank you for agreeing to talk with me, Sarah," Jessica said as her cameraman set up equipment. "Your video has touched millions of people. Can you tell me how this all started?" Sarah felt nervous in front of the camera, but Jessica's gentle questions helped her relax. She told the story of finding the broken piano during her lunch break and deciding to play it as a joke to cheer up her coworkers. She explained how she had to adapt the music to work around the damaged keys. "What does it mean to you that so many people have responded to your video?" Jessica asked. "I'm still trying to understand it," Sarah said honestly. "I never thought of myself as someone special. I'm just a person who works at a grocery store and happens to play piano. But if my playing makes people happy or inspires them to try new things, then I'm glad I shared it." The interview aired on the 6 o'clock news that evening, and by the next morning, it had been posted online and shared thousands more times. Sarah woke up to find that her video now had over 1 million views, and news stations from major cities were calling Marcus asking for interviews. At work on Thursday, Sarah could barely do her job because of all the interruptions. Customers kept asking for autographs and selfies. The store's phone rang constantly with reporters trying to reach her. Mr. Johnson was getting annoyed by all the disruptions to normal business. "Sarah, I don't know what's going on with this internet thing," Mr. Johnson said during a quiet moment, "but it's affecting the store. Can you make it stop?" Sarah did not know how to make it stop. The video seemed to have a life of its own now, spreading faster than she could keep track of. Marcus told her that music blogs and classical music websites were writing articles about her. A famous concert pianist had shared the video on her social media accounts, calling Sarah's adaptation skills remarkable and inspiring. By Friday, Sarah's video had been featured on a national morning television show. The hosts played the video and talked about how Sarah represented the American spirit of making the best of difficult circumstances. They called her story a reminder that talent and determination can overcome any obstacle. Sarah watched the show at home before work, feeling surreal about hearing strangers on television talk about her life. Danny sat next to her on the couch, equally amazed by what was happening. To his mother, "Mom, you're famous," Danny said. "Everyone in my school has seen your video. My friends think you're really cool." Sarah laughed. "I don't feel famous. I feel the same as I always did." But that was not entirely true. Sarah was starting to feel different, not because of the fame, but because of how people were responding to her music. She was beginning to understand that her playing really did have the power to touch people's hearts and inspire them to pursue their own dreams. That afternoon, Marcus came to see Sarah with news that shocked her even more than anything that had happened so far. "Sarah, I just got a call from a record label in Nashville," Marcus said. "They want to offer you a recording contract. They want to make an album of you playing classical music on various damaged pianos." Sarah stared at Marcus in disbelief. "A record deal? For me?" "They think there's a market for your unique style of adaptive classical music," Marcus explained. "They want to call the album Beautiful Broken and donate a portion of the profits to music education programs." Sarah sat down heavily in one of the folding chairs. A week ago, she was just a grocery store worker who played piano during her lunch break. Now people were talking about record deals and albums. It felt like she was living in someone else's dream. "I don't know what to say," Sarah said quietly. "You don't have to decide right now," Marcus said. "But Sarah, you have an opportunity to share your gift with the world. Think about all the people who have already been inspired by just one video. Imagine how many more people you could reach." That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with Danny, trying to process everything that had happened in just 1 week. Her simple lunch break piano playing had somehow become a viral sensation that was changing her entire life. "What do you think I should do, Danny?" Sarah asked her son. "I think you should follow your dreams, Mom," Danny said. "You've been taking care of everyone else your whole life. Maybe it's time to do something that makes you happy." Sarah looked at her son and realized he was right. For years, she had focused only on survival and taking care of her family. She had never imagined that she could have a career doing something she loved. But maybe the broken piano had given her more than just a place to play music. Maybe it had given her a chance to build a new life. The weekend brought no break from the attention surrounding Sarah's video. By Saturday morning, the video had reached 5 million views, and Sarah's story was being covered by news outlets across the country. Marcus arrived at Sarah's apartment with a stack of newspapers and magazines that had written articles about her. "Look at this, Sarah," Marcus said, spreading the publications across her kitchen table. "The Washington Post, USA Today, People magazine, they all have stories about you." Sarah picked up one of the newspapers and stared at a large photo of herself sitting at the broken piano. The headline read, "The Piano Whisperer, How One Woman's Lunch Break Performance Inspired a Nation." She could hardly believe she was looking at herself in a national newspaper. "This is overwhelming," Sarah sighed, sitting down at the table. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream." "It's real, Sarah," Marcus said gently. "And it's just the beginning. I got a call this morning from the producers of Good Morning America. They want you to appear on their show next week." Sarah felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. "Good Morning America? That's on television all across the country." "They want to bring you to New York and have you play piano live on the show," Marcus continued. "They're even offering to pay for your travel expenses and put you up in a hotel." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. It was Linda from the community center, and she sounded excited. "Sarah, you won't believe what just happened," Linda said. "A man called and said he's a professional piano restorer. He wants to donate a completely restored piano to the community center in your honor. He said your video inspired him to give back to the community." Sarah was amazed. "Someone wants to donate a real piano?" "Not just any piano," Linda said. "He said it's a beautiful baby grand piano that he's been working on for months. He wants to surprise you with it." After hanging up the phone, Sarah told Marcus about the piano donation. He was not surprised. He had been getting calls all morning from people who wanted to help or honor Sarah in some way. "A music store in? The next town wants to name a scholarship after you," Marcus said. "And a piano manufacturer called asking if you would consider being a spokesperson for their company." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Marcus, I'm just a grocery store worker. I don't know how to be a spokesperson or a celebrity." "Maybe that's exactly why people connect with you," Marcus said. "You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're a real person with real struggles who found joy in music despite difficult circumstances." On Monday morning, Sarah went to work as usual, but everything felt different. Customers lined up at her register specifically to meet her, and people from other towns drove to the grocery store just to see where the piano lady worked. Mr. Johnson was both annoyed and amazed by all the attention his store was getting. "Sarah, I've got reporters calling every hour asking about you," Mr. Johnson said. "Some big television show wants to film here. I don't know what to do with all this." During her lunch break, Sarah went to the community center and found something that took her breath away. The old broken piano was gone, and in its place stood a beautiful mahogany baby grand piano. Linda was standing next to it with tears in her eyes. "The piano restorer brought it this morning," Linda said. "He said he's been following your story and wanted to give you a proper instrument to play. But Sarah, that's not all. Look around." "The room," Sarah looked around and gasped. The entire community center main hall had been transformed. The walls had been freshly painted, new chairs were arranged in neat rows, and professional lighting had been installed. There was even a small stage area built around the piano. "What happened here?" Sarah asked. "Local businesses have been calling all weekend offering to help renovate the space," Linda explained. "A construction company donated the labor, furniture. Store donated the chairs, and an electrician installed the lighting for free. They all said your video inspired them to support the arts in our community." Sarah sat down at the beautiful new piano and touched the keys gently. Each key produced a perfect, clear note. After playing the broken piano for so long, the sound of a properly functioning instrument was almost overwhelming. "Try playing something," Linda encouraged. Sarah began to play Für Elise, the same piece she had first attempted on the broken piano, but now, with all the keys working perfectly, she could play the song exactly as Beethoven had written it. The music filled the renovated room with rich, beautiful sound. As she played, Sarah realized that a small crowd had gathered. Marcus was there with some of his students. Linda had invited several community center volunteers, and a few customers from the grocery store had wandered over during their lunch breaks. Everyone listened in amazed silence as Sarah played on the magnificent new piano. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes as she looked around at all the faces smiling at her with genuine appreciation and joy. "This is incredible," Sarah said softly. "I never imagined that playing piano could lead to something like this." Sarah, Marcus said, I have some news that might surprise you even more. I just got a call from the Grammy Foundation. They want to invite you to perform at a special concert celebrating everyday heroes in music. Sarah's mouth dropped open. The Grammys? But I'm not a professional musician. That's exactly why they want you, Marcus explained. They said your story represents what music is really about: passion, creativity, and the power to inspire others. They want you to play at Carnegie Hall as part of a benefit concert for music education. Carnegie Hall? Sarah had heard of it, of course. It was one of the most famous concert venues in the world. The greatest musicians in history had performed there. The idea that she might play there seemed impossible. I don't think I'm good enough for Carnegie Hall, Sarah said quietly. Sarah, look around you, Linda said, gesturing to the renovated room full of people who had come just to hear her play. Look at what your music has already accomplished. You've inspired millions of people, brought this community together, and reminded everyone that beautiful things can come from unexpected places. If that's not good enough for Carnegie Hall, then nothing is. That evening, Sarah sat with Danny at their kitchen table, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. Letters and packages had started arriving from fans all over the country. People sent sheet music, photographs, and handwritten notes thanking Sarah for inspiring them. Mom, read this one, Danny said, handing her a letter from a woman in Oregon. She says she hadn't played piano in 30 years, but your video made her start taking lessons again. Sarah read the letter and felt moved by the woman's story. Similar letters kept arriving, from retired teachers who had started playing music again, from teenagers who had decided to audition for school orchestras, from elderly people who had bought keyboards and were learning to play for the first time. I'm starting to understand why this is important, Sarah said to Danny. It's not really about me being famous. It's about showing people that it's never too late to pursue something you love. Are you going to do the television shows and the concerts? Danny asked. Sarah thought for a moment. The attention still made her nervous, and she worried about how it might change their simple life. But she also thought about all the letters from people who said her music had given them hope and courage. I think I have to, Sarah said finally. If my playing can help other people believe in themselves, then maybe I should share it as much as I can. Danny smiled at his mother. I'm proud of you, Mom. You're not just my mom anymore. You're like a hero to lots of people. Sarah laughed and hugged her son. I'm still just your mom, Danny. That will never change. But as Sarah looked at the stack of letters on their table and thought about the beautiful new piano waiting for her at the community center, she knew that Danny was right about one thing. Her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The broken piano had not just given her a place to play music. It had given her a chance to touch people's lives and maybe make the world a little bit better. Tomorrow, she would have to decide about the television appearances and the concert invitations. But tonight, she was content to sit with her son and read letters from people who had found inspiration in her simple act of making music with whatever tools she had available. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the most important things in life came from the most unexpected places. The weekend brought no break from the attention surrounding Sarah's video. By Saturday morning, the video had reached 5 million views, and Sarah's story was being covered by news outlets across the country. Marcus arrived at Sarah's apartment with a stack of newspapers and magazines that had written articles about her. Look at this, Sarah, Marcus said, spreading the publications across her kitchen table. The Washington Post, USA Today, People magazine, they all have stories about you. Sarah picked up one of the newspapers and stared at a large photo of herself sitting at the broken piano. The headline read, "The Piano Whisperer, How One Woman's Lunch Break Performance Inspired a Nation." She could hardly believe she was looking at herself in a national newspaper. This is overwhelming, Sarah sighed, sitting down at the table. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream. It's real, Sarah, Marcus said gently. And it's just the beginning. I got a call this morning from the producers of Good Morning America. They want you to appear on their show next week. Sarah felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. Good Morning America? that's on television all across the country. They want to bring you to New York and have you play piano live on the show, Marcus continued. They're even offering to pay for your travel expenses and put you up in a hotel. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. It was Linda from the community center, and she sounded excited. "Sarah, you won't believe what just happened," Linda said. "A man called and said he's a professional piano restorer. He wants to donate a completely restored piano to the community center in your honor. He said your video inspired him to give back to the community." Sarah was amazed. "Someone wants to donate a real piano?" "Not just any piano," Linda said. "He said it's a beautiful baby grand piano that he's been working on for months. He wants to surprise you with it." After hanging up the phone, Sarah told Marcus about the piano donation. He was not surprised. He had been getting calls all morning from people who wanted to help or honor Sarah in some way. "A music store in? The next town wants to name a scholarship after you," Marcus said. "And a piano manufacturer called asking if you would consider being a spokesperson for their company." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Marcus, I'm just a grocery store worker. I don't know how to be a spokesperson or a celebrity." "Maybe that's exactly why people connect with you," Marcus said. "You're not pretending to be something you're not. You're a real person with real struggles who found joy in music despite difficult circumstances." On Monday morning, Sarah went to work as usual, but everything felt different. Customers lined up at her register specifically to meet her, and people from other towns drove to the grocery store just to see where the piano lady worked. Mr. Johnson was both annoyed and amazed by all the attention his store was getting. "Sarah, I've got reporters calling every hour asking about you," Mr. Johnson said. "Some big television show wants to film here. I don't know what to do with all this." During her lunch break, Sarah went to the community center and found something that took her breath away. The old broken piano was gone, and in its place stood a beautiful mahogany baby grand piano. Linda was standing next to it with tears in her eyes. "The piano restorer brought it this morning," Linda said. "He said he's been following your story and wanted to give you a proper instrument to play. But Sarah, that's not all. Look around." "The room," Sarah looked around and gasped. The entire community center main hall had been transformed. The walls had been freshly painted, new chairs were arranged in neat rows, and professional lighting had been installed. There was even a small stage area built around the piano. "What happened here?" Sarah asked. "Local businesses have been calling all weekend offering to help renovate the space," Linda explained. "A construction company donated the labor, a furniture store donated the chairs, and an electrician installed the lighting for free. They all said your video inspired them to support the arts in our community." Sarah sat down at the beautiful new piano and touched the keys gently. Each key produced a perfect, clear note. After playing the broken piano for so long, the sound of a properly functioning instrument was almost overwhelming. "Try playing something," Linda encouraged. Sarah began to play Für Elise, the same piece she had first attempted on the broken piano, but now, with all the keys working perfectly, she could play the song exactly as Beethoven had written it. The music filled the renovated room with rich, beautiful sound. As she played, Sarah realized that a small crowd had gathered. Marcus was there with some of his students. Linda had invited several community center volunteers, and a few customers from the grocery store had wandered over during their lunch breaks. Everyone listened in amazed silence as Sarah played on the magnificent new piano. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes as she looked around at all the faces smiling at her with genuine appreciation and joy. "This is incredible," Sarah said softly. "I never imagined that playing piano could lead to something like this." "Sarah," Marcus said, "I have some news that might surprise you even more. I just got a call from the Grammy Foundation. They want to invite you to perform at a special concert celebrating everyday heroes in music." Sarah's mouth dropped open. "The Grammys? But I'm not a professional musician." "That's exactly why they want you," Marcus explained. "They said your story represents what music is really about: passion, creativity, and the power to inspire others." They want you to play at Carnegie Hall as part of a benefit concert for music education. Carnegie Hall? Sarah had heard of it, of course. It was one of the most famous concert venues in the world. The greatest musicians in history had performed. There, the idea that she might play there seemed impossible. "I don't think I'm good enough for Carnegie Hall," Sarah said quietly. "Sarah, look around you," Linda said, gesturing to the renovated room full of people who had come just to hear her play. "Look at what your music has already accomplished. You've inspired millions of people, brought this community together, and reminded everyone that beautiful things can come from unexpected places. If that's not good enough for Carnegie Hall, then nothing is." That evening, Sarah sat with Danny at their kitchen table, trying to make sense of everything that was happening. Letters and packages had started arriving from fans all over the country. People sent sheet music, photographs, and handwritten notes thanking Sarah for inspiring them. "Mom, read this one," Danny said, handing her a letter from a woman in Oregon. "She says she hadn't played piano in 30 years, but your video made her start taking lessons again." Sarah read the letter and felt moved by the woman's story. Similar letters kept arriving, from retired teachers who had started playing music again, from teenagers who had decided to audition for school orchestras, from elderly people who had bought keyboards and were learning to play for the first time. "I'm starting to understand why this is important," Sarah said to Danny. "It's not really about me being famous. It's about showing people that it's never too late to pursue something you love." "Are you going to do the television shows and the concerts?" Danny asked. Sarah thought for a moment. The attention still made her nervous, and she worried about how it might change their simple life. But she also thought about all the letters from people who said her music had given them hope and courage. "I think I have to," Sarah said finally. "If my playing can help other people believe in themselves, then maybe I should share it as much as I can." Danny smiled at his mother. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You're not just my mom anymore. You're like a hero to lots of people." Sarah laughed and hugged her son. "I'm still just your mom, Danny. That will never change." But as Sarah looked at the stack of letters on their table and thought about the beautiful new piano waiting for her at the community center, she knew that Danny was right about one thing. Her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The broken piano had not just given her a place to play music. It had given her a chance to touch people's lives and maybe make the world a little bit better. Tomorrow, she would have to decide about the television appearances and the concert invitations. But tonight, she was content to sit with her son and read letters from people who had found inspiration in her simple act of making music with whatever tools she had available. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the most important things in life came from the most unexpected places. 6 months after Sarah's video first went viral, her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. She was standing backstage at Carnegie Hall in New York City, wearing a simple black dress that the event organizers had helped her choose. In a few minutes, she would walk onto one of the most famous stages in the world and play piano for an audience of 2,000 people. "Are you nervous?" asked Marcus, who had become not just her friend but also her manager. He had taken a leave of absence from teaching to help Sarah navigate her new career in music. "Terrified," Sarah admitted, looking through the curtain at the massive concert hall. "I still can't believe I'm here." "Just remember what got you here," Marcus said gently. "It wasn't trying to be perfect. It was sharing your love of music honestly and authentically." Sarah nodded and thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. After appearing on Good Morning America and several other national television shows, she had signed a record deal with the Nashville label. Her album Beautiful Broken had been released 3 months ago and had become an unexpected bestseller. The album was unique in the world of classical music. Sarah had recorded herself playing classical pieces on various damaged pianos that she and Marcus had found around the country. Each piano had different problems: missing keys, out-of-tune strings, broken pedals, and Sarah had adapted famous compositions to work with each instrument's limitations. Critics had called the album innovative and deeply moving. Classical music fans loved hearing familiar pieces reimagined in creative ways. But more importantly, regular people who had never listened to classical music before were buying the album and discovering the beauty of this type of music through Sarah's accessible arrangements. The money from the album sales had changed Sarah's life completely. She had been able to quit her job at the grocery store and move with Danny to a larger apartment. She had paid off all her mother's medical bills and moved her to a better care facility closer to their new home. For the first time in years, Sarah was not constantly worried about money, but the most meaningful changes were not financial. Sarah had started teaching piano lessons to children whose families could not afford traditional music education. Every Tuesday evening, she taught a free class at the renovated community center, which had been officially renamed the Sarah Martinez Music Center in her honor. "The kids are here to see you," Marcus said, pointing to a group of young people in the audience. "Your Tuesday night students saved their money to buy train tickets to New York." Sarah looked out and saw Emma, Miguel, and Jasmine, three of her favorite students from the community center. They were sitting in the front row with their parents, beaming with excitement. Seeing their faces made Sarah feel more confident about her performance. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the announcement over the speaker system, "please welcome Sarah Martinez, whose story has inspired millions of people to pursue their dreams despite obstacles." Sarah walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The spotlight was bright, but she could see faces in the audience smiling and cheering for her. As she sat down at the beautiful concert grand piano, Sarah thought about the broken piano where this all began. That old, damaged piano was now on display in the lobby of the music center with a plaque that read, "Beautiful things can emerge from unexpected places." Children taking lessons often stopped to look at it and ask Sarah to explain how she had learned to play music on something so broken. "Tonight I want to play a piece that means a lot to me," Sarah said into the microphone. On the piano, it's Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven, but I'm going to play it the way I first learned it, adapted for a piano that didn't have all its keys working. Sarah began to play, and even though this piano was perfect, she played the song with the same creative adaptations she had developed on the broken piano. The audience listened in fascination as she took one of the world's most famous classical pieces and made it into something new and personal. As she played, Sarah thought about all the people who had written to tell her how her story had changed their lives. A retired nurse in Florida had started a community choir for seniors. A mechanic in Montana had begun building guitars in his garage. A teenager in California had overcome her fear of performing and auditioned for her school's talent show. When Sarah finished playing, the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. She stood and bowed, feeling overwhelmed by the response. As the applause continued, Sarah saw something that made her heart nearly burst with joy. Danny was standing in the wings, clapping and smiling with tears in his eyes. After the concert, there was a reception where Sarah met other musicians who had performed that evening. A famous violinist approached her and said, "Your story reminds us all why we became musicians in the first place. Thank you for bringing that authenticity back to classical music." But the conversation that meant the most to Sarah came from a young girl, maybe 10 years old, who had come to the reception with her grandmother. "Miss Martinez," the girl said shyly, "I saw your video and started taking piano lessons. My teacher says I'm getting good. Do you think broken things can really become beautiful?" Sarah knelt down to the girl's level and smiled. "I think broken things can become something even more beautiful than they were before because they have stories to tell. Your music will be beautiful because it comes from your heart, not because you have a perfect piano." Later that evening, Sarah and Danny sat in their hotel room overlooking Times Square. Danny was looking through a folder of newspaper clippings and magazine articles about his mother's success. "Mom, do you ever miss the grocery store?" Danny asked. Sarah laughed. "I miss some of the people there like Janet and Mike, but I don't miss feeling like I was invisible or that my life didn't matter to anyone." "You were never invisible to me," Danny said seriously. "But I'm glad other people can see how special you are now." Sarah hugged her son. At 18, Danny was preparing to start college in the fall. Thanks to the success of Sarah's album and concerts, they would be able to afford his education without taking on huge debts. Danny wanted to study engineering, but he had also started taking guitar lessons after watching his mother's musical career develop. "What's next for you, Mom?" Danny asked. "Well, I'm working on a second album," Sarah said. "This one will be original, compositions that I've been writing. And Marcus and I are planning to start a foundation that provides musical instruments to schools that can't afford them." Sarah also had been invited to write.